Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Insights on this week's Torah portion. Things get backward if we start to believe that we must keep God's law in order to be saved. So, for the next few moments, I want to talk with you about the grace versus law concept. Now, the Torah contains a lot of laws and commandments. And when we talk about the law, we ordinarily think of lists of rules and do's and don'ts. We forget that the Torah also contains all the stories from creation through the days of Moses. Torah is much more than just a legal code. Nevertheless, it does contain many laws and commandments. The word Torah means instruction. The laws and commandments found in the Torah are God's instructions for how he wants his people to live. The Torah is like a user's manual for life. And as Christians, we call it the Bible. Yes, the Holy Bible. That's the book for me. And so when we look at this week's Bible reading, we see that it contains a lot of laws. Look at Exodus chapters 21 through 23, and they read like an ancient legal code. Of the 613 commandments that the sages traditionally derived from the Torah, more than 50 of them are found in this portion. And for some reason, many Christian teachers seem to view the laws of the Torah as if they are a bad thing. It is commonly taught that the law is the opposite of grace. And you might hear someone say, well, we are no longer under the law. We are under grace. The implication is that anyone who believes in Jesus need not be concerned with the laws in the Old Testament. We can call this idea grace versus law. So let's think about the grace versus law idea. What do we mean when we say that we are not under the law? Does that mean we do not have to keep God's rules? For example, does it mean that we can commit adultery and thefts? Of course not. No one would say that. So what does it mean? Well, the grace versus law concept is derived from the writings of Paul. And in his epistles, it seems that Paul pits the two in opposition to each other. He often says things like, before faith came, we were kept in custody under the law. And that's found in Galatians chapter 3, verse 23. Or if you look at Galatians chapter 5, verse 18, it says, if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, one might understand these statements to mean that Christians do not need to keep God's rules. And of course, that would be absurd. Wouldn't you agree? Paul realized that some people might understand his teachings. So he cautioned us not to suppose that grace gives us free license to sin against God. When we look at Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 2, it says, what shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin so that grace may increase? May it never be. How shall we who died in sin still live in it? And then when we look at Romans chapter 3, verse 31, it says, do we then nullify the law through faith? May it never be. On the contrary, we establish the law. If Paul was not teaching believers that they did not have to keep God's rules, what was he talking about? In Paul's day, many of the Jewish believers taught that before Gentiles could enter into the kingdom of heaven, they needed to become Jewish. And the idea that a Gentile must become Jewish before being saved is what Paul calls being under the law. As we have seen earlier in our studies, Paul believed that Gentiles became sons of Abraham and part of the people of God through faith in Messiah. They did not need to earn that status by becoming legally Jewish. They did not need to first come under the law in order to enter the kingdom. The Bible does not actually teach the idea of grace versus law. Grace is God's free gift of salvation for those who believe in his Son. Law is his loving instruction for how his people should live. Grace versus law is a false dichotomy. They are not opposed to each other. They are meant to work hand in hand. And this can be compared to a man who adopted a son. After he had brought the boy home, he told him, "In our house, we have certain rules. And one of them is that you must always clear your dishes from the table after eating." And the boy began to fret. He reasoned to himself, "If I do not clear the dishes from the table, I will no longer be adopted. I will be an orphan again." Foolish child. The rules of the house were not meant to earn his place in the family. His obligation to the rules resulted from his already being made a part of the family. So you see, things get backward if we start to believe that we must keep God's law in order to be saved. Instead, we should keep God's law because we are saved. Wow. Thank you for joining me again on Insights into this week's Torah portion. My name is Dr. Ruth Pauline Plummer, and whatever you do, listen to me. Do not forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and we'll see you this time next year in Jerusalem. God bless you.